Hello everybody, my name is Happy and I'd like to welcome you all to my history reaction channel. Today is Saturday, so we're going to be taking a look at The Three Kingdoms by Oversimplified. As always, I will include a link to the original content in the description down below. I highly encourage folks to head over to Oversimplified and showing them some support if you like what you see here. Alright, with that said, we are making our way through the back catalog of Oversimplified. I just started with the oldest and moving toward the front, skipping over any that I've already covered, as well as the one on Hitler, specifically because that one's been banned in several countries, and it's controversial just because of the topic. It's stupid. I'll probably end up doing it eventually anyway, especially if people ask me to do it. But for now, I'm going to skip over it and get through the rest of the catalog. If people want to see that one, let me know. I'll be happy to do it. I'm not particularly keen with YouTube censoring history at all. In fact, it irritates me to no end, but it is what it is. And right now, because I'm still in the infancy of my channel and trying to avoid anything that's too controversial, I don't want to get in trouble until I've got a little further down the line. Anyway, we are the Three Kingdoms. This one should be fun. Those of you who have been following my channel for a while know that I really like trying to break free of some of the traditional areas that a lot of history channels and even history reactors tend to hit, which tends to be military history and Western history, either United States or Western Europe. There's just not that much out there, at least in the mainstream for other parts of the world, except occasionally Japan and China. I'd like to put more focus on places like Asia, especially the less talked about areas, as well as Africa, South America, even Australia for that matter, New Zealand, down in that area, or the Pacific Islands, you know, places that aren't covered as much. And we really haven't done anything really big on Asia yet, other than, well, on China, I guess I should clarify. We've done a little bit on Korea, the Philippines, but it's time to take on the one that is got some of the most convoluted and longest history of all of them, China. So this is a very well-known period, and we're just going to go ahead and get into it. I will add what I can, where I can. I'm fairly familiar with this period. I don't know necessarily all the details, and don't even ask me to try to keep all the names straight. That's not going to happen. I always get a headache when I'm trying to track all those names and all the movement of this period, because this is a crazy period. Let's get into it.
This video was made possible by Total War Three Kingdoms, the brand new
that's
strategy
appropriate.
game from the multi-award-winning Total War series. Support my channel by using the link in the description down below to buy the game on Steam.
I eventually need to try some Total War over on my gaming channel. I've got Total War Rome and I think Empire. I think those are the two I have. Might have one more, but those two I got for sure. But I've never really played them. I just have a lot of games on the wish list, and whenever they get one of those sales where they're on sale for a negligible amount, I grab them real fast and eventually get around to them. So if any of you would like to see me try some Total War, I can add it to my gaming channel list. But continuing.
Also, new merch available now in the store, including a mystery new character pin. I wonder who it could be. Ancient China.
Alright.
The sun is shining. The birds are singing.
Right.
The children are playing in the village square. What a wonderful time to be alive. Hey, the Yellow River flooded again and destroyed. And also we're being raided by nomadic tribesmen.
Yeah.
And also this period of Chinese history may be entirely mythical, meaning you may not even exist. Well, that would certainly explain the laser eyes.
Yeah. So, I mentioned this all the way back in the very first video I ever did, which was History of the Entire World, I guess, by Bill Wirtz. If you were to make a list of the 20 worst river floods in history, China would probably top more than half of those worst floods, and specifically the Yellow River and the Yangtze River. They're notorious flooders. And they're not just minor floods either. They, especially in the past, could be completely devastating. So early Chinese history, all the way up into the relatively modern era, is a story of people being wiped out by the floods of those two rivers. They're a big deal. They're essential for the establishment of civilization in China. A lot of the early civilizations are founded along these rivers. You need that fresh water, but they are notorious flooders. Bad flooders.
Chinese civilization began around the year 2000 BC when the possibly mythical Xia dynasty was formed. Throughout China's history, dynasties would usually rise up with a powerful leader who worked for the good of the people. But over time, the leaders would become more corrupt and self-serving. Someone would inevitably build a lake of alcohol, and the angry populace...
Yeah, that's a popular legend. I can't remember the name of the emperor that did that, but supposedly he filled a pool full of alcohol.
Would overthrow them, giving way for a new dynasty to rise. Following this pattern, the Xia dynasty was replaced by the Shang, who liked bronze and writing. But then the
Yeah, so that writing there is typically on shells. That's some of the earliest writing we have from China. And it's actually, they do divinations with them. You'll write a prayer on a bone or a shell, then you'll heat it, it'll crack, and the way it cracks will give you the answer to whatever it is that you were praying for on that bone or shell.
Leaders got corrupt and were replaced by the Zhou, who liked iron and philosophy. But that one sort of just fell apart and was replaced by the Qin, who liked building walls and people made out of rock. But they were pretty tyrannical from the start and were quickly replaced by the Han, who liked creating new trade routes and getting in touch with their emotions.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the Three Kingdoms. That is a period that's sandwiched between the end of the Eastern Han dynasty and I want to say the Western Jin. So towards the beginning of the 3rd century and then the end of the 3rd century. There's a period of about, 60-ish years in there where it's pure chaos.
In line with this pattern, the Han dynasty came about under the strong and popular leadership of Emperor Gaozu. The dynasty remained firmly in place for over 4 centuries and was considered a golden age in Chinese history, developing new forms of art, political thinking, technology. Oh, looks like all the leaders got corrupt. See, probably the biggest problem in ancient China's political system that allowed so much corruption to come about all the time was a little something called court culture. Let me explain. Imagine for me, if you will, that you are the son of the Chinese emperor. Hooray! Now, apart from how weird it is that you have a ton of stepmoms and many of them would like to kill you, and also all of your friends are middle-aged dudes with no dongs, life's...
Eunuchs, specifically. That actually wasn't uncommon in several cultures, to have some of your highest cult servants and advisors be eunuchs. For one thing, it limits their ability to threaten your dynasty because they can't have offspring of their own, so they really aren't going to overthrow you and start their own dynasty. They might overthrow you, but then the dynasty can end with them. But you'll see that in several countries. And before I forget, this period in Chinese history is going to be paralleled quite a bit by what's going on over in Rome. Because Rome around this time is going to be having some internal struggles, civil wars, breakups due to corruption, and a lot of the same patterns.
Pretty all right. One day, your father says, "Son, I know our relationship hasn't been the best, and I've never said this before, but I just want to let you know that I love you." Oh no, I'm having a heart attack!
Oops.
Look at you. Now you're the emperor. I'm so proud of you. But wait, you are but a child and have no idea how to rule over a massive empire. Fret not, because just about everyone in your court wants to help you out with that.
Yep.
Hey man, remember me? I'm your mom's bro. Anyway, I heard you needed someone to rule over China for you. I mean, to help you rule China. So hey, here's a popsicle. I hope we can get along. No way, man. We've been your friends and your personal caretakers your whole life. And even though we may have no dongs, I think you should give us all the power to rule China. I mean, help you rule China. So who will you be influenced by?
This is extremely common throughout Asian and European history. In fact, we just recently did a video on Ivan the Terrible. And this is kind of what happened to him and his brother. Father dies young. He and his brother are too young to become Tsar. And they are basically, for all intents and purposes, kidnapped by the boyars and directed wherever the boyars wanted them to go. The same thing happens basically to Peter the Great. But yeah, you see this all through histories in just about every country. That's just the one that jumps to mind because we literally just covered that like a couple days ago. So yeah, it's just child emperors, child kings can be a problem because they invite this kind of power play where adults that are in a position to influence them are going to try to exert that influence. And it often leads to a lot of backstabbing, a lot of political maneuvering. It can get really chaotic, and it can lead to coups, civil war, all of that.
Scheming uncle or your loyal eunuchs. And towards the end of the Han Dynasty, a string of child emperors allowed more and more power to fall into the hands of the eunuchs. Oh no, now they're scheming too. They began handing out government jobs for bribes, heavily taxing the poor for their own wealth. And while you're sitting there eating your popsicle, everyone in your court is literally murdering each other to try and consolidate more power and riches for themselves, while all the peasants are outside like,
Story is old as
you guys know
time.
there's been a drought out here for 2 years? Guys? Obviously, the people weren't too happy that while they were struggling to survive, they were also being heavily taxed so that the eunuch faction could all have rockin' mansions, complete with swimming pools and Alexas. So finally, when a self-proclaimed Taoist wizard came along and was like, you know whose fault it is that we're all out here starving?
Yeah, Dong Zhuo. That is founder of the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Let's see what he has to say about it, but I can add a little bit about that, because this is kind of an interesting event in Chinese history.
It's the emperor and his posse. They've lost their mandate from heaven, and the imperial family must be destroyed with an unrelenting, furious wrath. Also, check this out. Can you tell what it is yet? Ta-da!
The kitty!
It's a little kitty cat. Look at her little ears. The people loved his political philosophy. He promised them land reforms, and his followers grew in number. They began arming themselves and wearing yellow turbans. And they also developed a really catchy slogan. In the year 184...
Let's go back to that saying, and let's talk about the...
wearing yellow turbans. And they also developed a really catchy slogan. In the year 184, the Yellow Turban Rebellion...
Whoops, that was weird.
And they also developed a really catchy slogan.
There it is. The azure sky is already dead. The yellow sky will rise soon. So, let's talk about the yellow turbans. What this is there's 3 brothers that basically form a new sect of Taoism. It's a Taoist sect. And they are big on preaching peace. They're big on faith healing. You come to us, you confess to us, and we will provide you with healing. They did it for free for the poor, the underprivileged, and they developed quite a large following of this Taoist sect. And one of their beliefs was that we were approaching a time of transition. It's kind of like Christians waiting for the second coming, or the end of the Mayan calendar. They believe that or the coming of the age of Aquarius from my generation, well, my childhood. They think that the old age is about to end, a new one's about to start. The old one was characterized by the azure sky, the new one will be characterized by the yellow sky. That's why the yellow turban or the yellow headband becomes their symbol. And yeah, let's keep going from here. But I just wanted you to have an understanding of what this was. It was a Taoist sect. It was fairly pacifistic initially anyway, in theory. And it was devoted to faith healing, primarily.
Slogan. In the year 184, the Yellow Turban Rebellion broke out across China, with millions rising up against the Han Dynasty, and the imperial government in the capital city freaked out. With all their internal bickering, they were completely unprepared and unable to deal with such a huge rebellion. So they were forced to call on independent warlords from across the empire to help them deal with this situation.
You can already guess what's going to go wrong with this. You invite all these warlords in to help fight, but now you've got all these armies raised by all these independent warlords who are going to see an opportunity to take more or to take stuff for themselves.
Some big names took part in the fighting. I'm talking the likes of the great Cao Cao, the tyrannical Dong Zhuo, Liu Bei, Sun
Liu
Jian,
Fu.
and many other Chinese names
Yep.
I'm definitely not pronouncing correctly. These warlords
I
crushed
won't
the
get 'em right
rebellion in
either.
their own respective regions, and with casualties in the millions, the Han Dynasty breathed a huge sigh of relief. But what they didn't realize is that by relying on all the warlords and their armies, they had essentially diminished their own central control over the empire, and many of the warlords now held the power to act almost completely independently and rule over their own local regions themselves. Back in the capital, the emperor and his son were having a little chat. Listen, I know we've had our ups and downs, and I spend all of my time with your many smoking hot stepmoms instead of you. But what say you and I finally go on a little fishing trip together this weekend? Oh no, I'm having a stroke!
Uh-oh.
And yet another child emperor was on the throne. This time, however, instead of the eunuch faction gaining even more power, this child emperor's uncle became his regent, who also just so happened to be the head of the imperial army, He Jin. Man, I hate those sneaky, lying, cheating eunuchs. Hey Warlord Yuan Shao, what should we do? Kill them all.
Works for me.
Right on. You can't kill the eunuchs. They're a vital part of this empire's governance. And also, they paid me a lot of money to say that about them. Ah, come on! No! So He Jin and Yuan Shao decided the empress may need more convincing. And so they called in an infamous, feared, tyrannical, overweight warlord from the northwest to help convince her. That man was Dong Zhuo, and he set out for the capital city with his army. Hey guys, I heard a rumor that He Jin was planning on killing us. Then why don't we kill him first? And so it was. They lured him to the palace with a forged letter from his sister, and when he got there, they lobbed off his head.
Jeez.
Kill them all. Imperial forces stormed the palace, and the eunuchs were all massacred. The peasants, who were still suffering from drought and starvation, saw what was going on and began to riot. The emperor and his brother were forced to flee the city, which was now in flames, and the feared, nasty, tyrannical, bloated Dong Zhuo had just arrived. He found the emperor and his brother wandering the hills outside of the city and was understandably confused. So he scooped up the emperor, went to the capital and was like, "Hey guys, what's up? I see the capital is on fire. Also, I'm here with my army and I have the emperor with me." Wait a minute.
Yeah,
the capital is on
exactly.
fire. I'm here with my army and I have the emperor. Screw you guys, I'm in charge. So now Dong Zhuo ruled over the Han Dynasty as the emperor's regent. His first act was to say to the emperor, "Hey man, no hard feelings, but I like your little brother better, so I'm actually making him emperor instead of you, so you're free to go do whatever you want." Actually,
Oh, brother. Yeah.
yeah, that feels better. Dong Zhuo ruled with an iron
You don't want anybody rallying around the rightful ruler. That would be bad for your power play.
fist, and he did whatever the flip he wanted. He made absolute decisions himself, showing no regard for the monarchy. He had his opponents or those who disagreed with him killed. He broke protocol, doing things like keeping his sword when approaching the emperor, wearing shoes in the court,
Oh, worse still, Crocs. I mean, really.
sleeping in the emperor's bed, and worst of all, he would walk in the presence of the emperor. You were meant to trot. The other warlords around the empire hated him, and so they said, "Something needs to be done about this guy. What say we form a coalition and oust him?" And it was agreed. Warlords from across China, their armies amounting to 100,000 men, allied together against the tyranny of Dong Zhuo.
Just so we're clear, a lot of the numbers that we have for this period are going to be highly debated and probably exaggerated. I don't know how deep Oversimplified went in looking up these numbers and whether he's going with the more extreme numbers, which is probably the most likely, or the more conservative numbers, or somewhere in the middle. But be aware that a lot of the numbers of this period are best taken with a grain of salt. Now, this period, we do know roughly what the population would have been at the beginning of this period and at the end of this period. Why? Because the Chinese kept censuses. Now, they're not always going to be the most accurate censuses, especially this far back in time. Getting an accurate count of all the people in a huge country like China is going to be extremely difficult. But it should at least give us a ballpark idea of how the population changed from the beginning to the end. And it's alarming. The population in China before we enter this period of history and all the way to the end of the Three Kingdoms, it starts at around, I think it was around 8 million or a little over 8 million on the official census, and it ends just a little over 3 million on the official census. So a significant portion of the population dies during this period. Now, it's not all going to be the war. This period sees two major other things going on. There's several major famines in this period in China. There are several major disease outbreaks. And with the country so fractured and broken up, with all the various leaders distracted by all the warfare going on, there's not going to be a good response to any of these crises. So that's going to contribute heavily to this population loss. But a lot of people are also killed by fighting.
Yuan Shao's coalition consisted of some of the nation's most capable leaders, including his half-brother Yuan Shu, the great Cao Cao, and Sun Jian. But Dong Zhuo had an ace up his sleeve. His protege and adopted son, one of the most skilled and feared warriors in all of China. It's Lu Bu. This guy was a beast of a man. He never lost a duel, and no other warlord dared challenge him to one. He was also...
Yeah, he was known as being an undefeatable duelist, but that doesn't necessarily make you a great general. There's a world of difference between able to handle yourself in a fight and being able to lead others in a fight.
Also famous for betraying just about every warlord he ever fought for, something that Dong Zhuo didn't seem too concerned about. The coalition...
You know, if I brought in a guy to lead my armies who had a reputation for betraying everybody he'd ever worked for before, I'd be concerned. I think I'd be very concerned. I think I wouldn't want him.
Attacked Dong Zhuo in Luoyang, and in particular, Sun Jian's forces inflicted a heavy defeat against him, and he was forced to flee to the city of Chang'an. After this initial success, however, the war entered into a stalemate. The warlords in the coalition realized it was going nowhere, and also they all secretly hated each other, so they all went home. Dong Zhuo was safe, until... Legend has it that a government official in Chang'an had a daughter who was hot, super hot. He invited Lu Bu to his home and promised Lu Bu that someday he could marry his daughter.
Yeah, but he also promised it to the other guy as well. Oops.
Then, he invited Dong Zhuo to his house and did the exact same thing. Dong Zhuo was so smitten that he insisted on taking her as his concubine immediately. And when Lu Bu heard the news, he was pretty unhappy. Hey man, aren't you worried that you stole Lu Bu's girl and betrayal is like his personal hobby? Lu Bu? Betray me? No way, man. Never gonna happen.
Yeah.
Ah, crap. Lu Bu, along with other government officials, assassinated the tyrannical Dong Zhuo. Then they left his body burning in the streets. Some sources say he was so fat and oily, he kept on burning for days.
Ew.
Nice.
Hey, put the marshmallow down, dude. That is gross. Roasting a marshmallow over a burning corpse?
So with Dong Zhuo dead, and the power of the Han government essentially decimated, China was left with a huge power gap, and a ton of warlords who all slept soundly at night dreaming of being the one to fill it. Here we enter into a crazy and chaotic period of civil war all across China, with so many people, so much betrayal, so much intricacy, it makes Game of Thrones look like a Dr. Seuss publication. But just to give you
I'm trying to imagine Game of Thrones in the Dr. Seuss style. That's actually kind of a disturbing thought.
An idea of how crazy and chaotic it was, see if you're able to keep up with this. Are you ready? Here we go. Here's a rough map of the warlords throughout the Han Dynasty at the time. Half-brothers Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu were both in a power struggle for who would become the figurehead of their family. Yuan Shu made alliances with warlords in the north, along with Sun Jian, the guy who defeated Dong Zhuo. Yuan Shao also made alliances with Liu Biao in the south and Cao Cao, who was an amazing strategist and general. All of these warlords began fighting each other. Cao Cao began building his own
Easy, right? You guys got all that, right?
Strength by subjugating nearby remnants of the Yellow Turban Rebellion into his own forces. Down south, things weren't going so well for Sun Jian, as he was killed in an ambush. So Sun Ce took over. Then, Yuan Shu got pushed back to the river Huai, so he ordered Sun Ce to take the territory of warlord Lu Kang. Then Sun Ce went off to capture territories in the east for himself. Cao Cao's family lived in this province over here. One day, they were murdered. Oh no, Cao Cao held the province's governor responsible, and so he launched a cruel invasion in which he pillaged cities and murdered over 100,000 civilians. The governor sent out a call for help, and a very popular, likable warlord by the name of Liu Bei came to his aid. However, while Cao Cao was away fighting, a rebellion was staged against him in his home province, by none other than, it's Lu Bu. Cao Cao rushed home and defeated Lu Bu, who fled to the east, which by now had been inherited by Liu Bei. Then Lu Bu, surprise surprise, launched a rebellion against Liu Bei, who fled to Cao Cao. Together, Cao Cao and Liu Bei would go on to invade and defeat Lu Bu. Lu Bu offered to join Cao Cao, and Cao Cao considered the offer. But his advisors were like, no way, man, this guy's betrayed literally everyone he ever worked for. And so boohoo, Lu Bu was executed. Next,
Got it.
Cao Cao convinced the emperor to move in with him. Now he's in control of the Han government, something that made his allies very jealous. Yuan Shu, out of nowhere, decides to declare himself emperor of the new Zhong dynasty.
Oops.
Nobody liked that.
Yeah, I was going to say, bad call at this time. That makes you the target.
His allies cut ties with him. The imperial government ordered everyone to kill him. He tried to flee to his brother Yuan Shao, but died of illness on the way. Sun Ce took over his territory, and then got assassinated. So his brother,
Oops.
Sun Chen, took over. Liu Bei turned on Cao Cao, but got obliterated, and was forced to flee south. Yuan Shao finally defeated the warlord to his north, and could now focus south. He declared war on his ally Cao Cao, but was defeated at the Battle of Guandu. Cao Cao has now united the north, and he turned his attention to the south. In particular, Liu Biao's province was becoming a powerful threat, so Cao Cao attacked him. Liu Bei was now fighting for Liu Biao, and he held Cao Cao off for a while. But then Liu Biao died and his son took over, and immediately surrendered to Cao Cao. Liu Bei was horrified, and he fled southward to try and maintain control of the province. Cao Cao was on an absolute roll, and it looked like he would be the one to take control of China. He began making plans to attack both Liu Bei and Sun Qian, and the two of them, seeing where things were headed, met up and decided to form an alliance.
Good
Now I know
call.
that was a lot to take in, but all you really need to know at this point is that this guy is on his way to taking over everything, and he's about to throw his full weight at the southern warlords. These two have one chance, one battle, to prevent him from invading the
Red
south.
Cliffs.
And that battle was the famous Battle of Red Cliffs.
Yep.
To take the south, Cao Cao would need to control and cross the mighty Yangtze River. He had over 200,000 men to face against Liu Bei and Sun Qian's combined force of 50,000. How would they stand a chance when they were so outnumbered? Legend says most of Sun Qian's advisors pleaded with him to surrender, but then he smashed up a table and they all backed down. Luckily, Cao Cao's forces were ravaged by disease and exhaustion, and his northern soldiers weren't too comfortable on ships.
Yeah, that is one of the stories. Now, when we're talking about Battle of Red Cliffs, or even this entire period, but especially this battle, it's really hard to separate the myths and legends from the actual historical facts, because there is a lot of stories about what happened here. Some of them are pretty extraordinary and probably didn't happen, but just about all of it's debatable to some degree or the other. But yes, according to a lot of the sources, one of the problems that Cao Cao has is that his crew is primarily northern Chinese that weren't used to being on or near the water. So a lot of them had trouble. And I mentioned earlier, this is a period where there is a lot of disease going around anyway. And Cao Cao is feeling the effects of both. So that is going to be a problem for him. Now, there is this legend that while floating his ships down the Yangtze or up the Yangtze, I don't remember which way he was going, he actually lashed his ships together with chains in order to keep them steadier so that his soldiers didn't get seasick. And that this binding of his ships together with chains is going to be what gets his navy or his forces defeated. But again, how much of that is true, I don't know.
So when Cao Cao sailed down the river and the two sides met for an initial skirmish at Wulin, Cao Cao was unable to inflict a defeat against the allies. Then one of Sun Qian's men came up with a very sneaky plan. He sent Cao Cao a letter pretending that he and others wanted to defect to his side, and offered to bring him some of Liu Bei and Sun Qian's finest ships. Little did Cao Cao know, however, that those ships were full of flammable reeds. As they approached his fleet, they were set alight and destroyed his ships in camp. Seeing the situation as
yeah, and that's where that Cao Cao ships being chained together comes into play, because that's one of the explanations that is given on why he wasn't able to avoid these fire ships once he realized what was going on, because his entire armada was all tied together.
hopeless, Cao Cao ordered a difficult retreat through the rain and marshlands, during which more of his men fell to illness and disease. The underdogs had won, and Cao Cao would never again have another chance to take the south. Following that, the three warlords took some time to finish off some smaller competitors in their own regions, and by the year 214, China looked a little bit like this. Cao Cao
Three
continued to
kingdoms.
try to penetrate the southern regions, but had no success, and even lost the Hanzhong region to Liu Bei in 217. The former allies eventually fell out over who should own this territory.
Of course
here,
they did.
with Sun Qian coming out on top. In 220, Cao Cao died of a head disease, and was replaced by his son, Cao Pi. Cao Pi convinced the Emperor of Han to abdicate, and then proclaimed himself the Emperor of the new state of Wei. Liu Bei followed suit, declaring himself the true Emperor of Shu Han. And a few years later, Sun Qian joined in the fun and declared himself Emperor of Wu. And so now you have a number of kingdoms in China. How many? Count them. 1, 2, 3. 3 kingdoms. Except, actually, they weren't kingdoms, they were dynasties. And when the
Right.
3 kingdoms finally formed, not a whole lot happened. For the next 3 decades, they continued to engage in combat, but it almost always ended in stalemate, and nobody really got anywhere. So how did it all end? Did Cao Cao's descendants eventually realize his dream of unifying China? Not quite. Instead, the 3 kingdoms became victims of the usual problems that plagued Chinese dynasties. In Wu, Sun Qian's descendant became a tyrant, who was more interested in spending time with his concubines than governing. In Shu Han,
I think I could get down with that.
a powerful, corrupt, eunuch faction rose up, and by now we all know how that ends.
Right.
And in Wei, a string of young emperors gave way for a powerful family, the Sima clan, to take control of the dynasty's government. This Sima clan recognized the weak state Shu and Wu had been reduced to, and so they began making plans. I've just received this letter that says Wei is planning to attack us. Should we make preparations for war? Nah, it's probably nothing to worry about. Let's do absolutely nothing. Sounds good to me. Wei launched a full-scale invasion into Shu, which fell within a year. Then Sima Yan forced the Wei emperor to abdicate and proclaimed himself emperor of the new Jin dynasty. In the year 279, Jin launched an invasion of Wu and finally unified China in the year 280. The pattern of rising and falling dynasties, division and reunification would continue in China for centuries to come. Right now you may be asking yourself, but wait a minute, what would have happened if Cao Cao had his way and unified China? Or what if
Advertisement.
Lu Bu never assassinated Dong Zhuo and he continued to rule over the Han dynasty? What about if one of these smaller warlords had risen to the top? Dang it, what if I want to be a warlord during the downfall of the Han
Yep.
dynasty? Whoa, partner, calm down, because now
Total
you
war.
can.
So we're done. Thank you for joining me. I hope you learned something. I know I did. I knew most of the broad strokes, but there's a few details. Like I said, I can never keep all those names straight. It's just so confusing. But an interesting time in history. And like I said, what's going on here is being echoed to some degree over in Rome at the same time. So, very turbulent times. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you next Saturday for more Oversimplified. Until then, so long for now. Bye-bye.